Hey guys, welcome to Fancy Footy Floodbath, and today we're looking at the players that not many people are looking at. We're going to go through the AFL Fantasy website and check all the players that have really low ownership today, and we might be able to find you some hidden gems that will play well this year, that will get big points, and that will help your team to success. At the top of the tree, before we look at those, is obviously a guy like Will Ashcroft is going to be pretty popular. There's talk that he's the new Nick Dacos of 2023. 57.2, this is the part here I'm looking at, which tells you how many people own them. Josh Dunkley also will be popular, 49.8. Taranto is a bit of a surprise at 47.3, although he's in my team at the moment, as is those other two. Rosie 42.7, Dacos 40.8, Matthias Philippou at 46, Cornelio 37, Tim English at 33, Marshall there at 32.1, Tom Mitchell 31.2, Ginby has obviously everyone's looking at him as a rookie, 29.7, Sicily 28.2, Toby McLean 27.9, obviously a bargain basement price there for McLean. And we've got exposed form at the end of last year and in previous seasons when he's been fit. Chesser, 27.4, who I don't think will play round one, but we'll see. But my word is that I'm hearing is that he's not going to make it. Will Phillips, 26.3, Tuke Miller, 25.9, Cameron, 24. And we're just going to arrow down. Obviously, some of those names will look pretty familiar. I'm heading towards the under 10% group, and we'll start with Lloyd Meek at 10%. Obviously, probably not a good pick, Lloyd Meek. While he's at a very juicy price, he's got that matchup with Lynch and also the matchup with, who's the other one there? Reeves at Hawthorn. So week to week, that could change who they decide to pick. I think Mitchell he's certainly got an idea generally of what his game style is, but the specifics of it in terms of who will be the leader in the ruck may not have been kind of decided yet. Even if it is Meek, his form in AFL level has not been worthy of getting great points. He has done really well at waffle level, but not quite at the AFL level yet. So we need to see a bit more from him probably before he's on our radar. Thomas obviously had that incident during the week. He's at 9.3%. It's probably a no for now, but we'll need to keep an eye on him during the season. Maybe later on in the season he'll be more of an option. Chad Warner's a bit of surprise, as is Luke Davies-Uniacke there. Warner, obviously, a lot of people are talking about a fantasy breakout year. Obviously, he's had the 3 years at the Swans and done really well and looked like a really good player, but or 2 or 3 years. But he could have a fantasy breakout this year. 8.6% owned at the moment. Davies-Uniacke looked really great at the end of last year. 8.4%. Sitas there, 8.4%, but I'm not sure that he's going to be in the best 22 for the Suns. Another one for the Suns is the new recruit Bailey Humphrey, who was a top 10 draft pick, 8.1. Zach Merritt down there at 8.1. Connor McKenna, 7.9. Luke Jackson, 7.7. Who'll probably be doing a lot of work up forward and maybe even around the bounce down with Darcy doing the ruck. I've heard that he's going to do a bit of CBA work as well. So we'll see how that goes. Cam McKenzie, obviously a rated youngster at at Essendon. Sorry, at the Hawks. They're playing Essendon round one. 7.6%. Bontempelli 7.4, who's at a good price. Juicy price, Bontempelli. And I'm currently considering him. Dylan Moore, who played terrific last year, 7.2. Cripps, obviously off a Brownlow medal year. The stats are not great for players coming off a Brownlow, but we need to keep an eye on him because he could tear it up early, especially without Walsh there. All Carlton midfielders are a bit on the radar. 6.9 for Cripps. Bailey Smith, 6.7. Will Gould, who hopefully will get an opportunity with the Swans this year, 6.6. Josh Kelly, 6.4. Butters, 6.2. Witts, 6.1. And let's arrow down to some relevant ones. Corey Wagner's an interesting one. Apparently just did a hamstring at Fremantle at training the other day, which is a shame, but he'll definitely be on our radar. 285k defender mid, and if he gets a game early, then he's a lock for our defence probably, or um, on the bench. He can score, not a huge scorer in the VFL, but he's got that mature age recruit thing, 27 years old on his side. So he's one to keep an eye out for. But I'm sure at 5.4%, it doesn't sound like a lot of people have put him in their team. That's like 1 in 20. But at the moment, 5.4% is a reasonably high ownership amount, as you know, we're probably still 2 months away from the season and a couple of months away. You know, there's a lot of people that are actually still going to join in the next couple of months. But let's keep arrowing down. Luke Pedlar's another one, 4.5% there. I would think that Pedlar will be definitely on our benches early in the season, and we'll get a look in at the Crows. Look, Connor Blakely's an interesting one. If he gets a game, he'll be a bargain price. Midfielder about 235k, I think, for the Suns. Cunnington's a really interesting one. If he continues to get a lot of CBAs, obviously he's going to play forward for parts of it, but Cunnington with his CBAs, if he can keep up a lot of them, which is doubtful, but if he does, then he's going to be a good price too. Aaron Hall, obviously we've all been burnt by Aaron Hall at some stage, some last year, some in previous times. While he was great 2 years ago, you know, you got to look at the age, 32 now, owned by 4.4% of teams. You know, I think if you pick him and he does well, it's going to be a genius move. But just be ready that if he gets injured or his role changes, then you could be in trouble picking him. Elijah Hewitt, lots of talk about him at the Eagles. Might be a good pick at 4.3% for our one of our rookies. Let's arrow down. Newcomb's an interesting one, 3.9, but I just want to see with all the changes at the Hawks how much time he gets. Obviously, you'd think he'd still be about the 80% CBAs rate, and he's juicily priced, but how much those other guys affect his numbers will be interesting. And the other thing with Newcomb is I found that last year that he had a bit of a ceiling on his running ability. Probably didn't because he hasn't had the pre-seasons in the AFL that some others have had, especially around his age, because he's a mature age recruit. So I think that Newcomb will be a watch. His fitness is going to improve a fair bit after that pre-season, so he should be able to run out games better. We found a lot of the time that Newcomb would be and sitting on an 80 or a 90 halfway through the third quarter and then kind of go missing because I think his fitness was struggling a little bit at times towards the end of the season. But those numbers could continue to flourish like they did in the first few quarters of a game this year. Tucker's an interesting one where he fits into North Melbourne. I'm on board with Chera. I think with Walsh missing, Chera is probably the next guy who's going to get a fair bit of the ball there. Lockie Cowan as well, I'm interested in if he gets a look in at the Blues. Ben King's a really interesting one coming off that ACL, 3.5%, very cheap, about 316,000 I think it is. So he's another guy that to keep on our radar. He's not much more expensive than a top draft pick at 316k, and he might be a good one to pick because we know that he can take a mark and kick a goal, which is bona fide points. Petrarca's really interesting, 3.4%. That's really low, as is Parrish. Parrish has had a bit of an interrupted pre-season, I think, so that might be why his number is quite low there. Juicily priced though, 890, I think it is, or 888. So Parrish and Petrarca are ones to look out for. A bit cheaper than some of the top level mids, but they certainly can produce and have a big ceiling on their day. So they're definitely ones to keep an eye on. It's further down. McRae's an interesting one. Finlay McRae, 2.9%. He might be, when he gets named into their team, which he will at some point, I think he's a good cash cow for us. He's still very well priced, as is Cooper Stevens, moving from Geelong to Hawthorn, a bit more than McRae, but Cooper Stevens at 390, I think it is. He's in my team at the moment. I think he will be quite a good pick, and his impact in that midfield for Hawthorn will be interesting. I'm staying away from Jacob Hopper because he's mostly just a mid. And especially in a team that doesn't score a lot, I don't think Hopper has a huge amount of upside. Errol Goulden is one I think who does have a lot of upside. About 735, third year in the system. There's been growth in the first 2 years, so we'd expect him to get better again and do better again. But whether there's enough upside in that 735k purchase, who knows? Windhager, when Windhager gets released from being a tagger, which he might straight away this year, they might have decided that they want someone else to do the tagging. If they do, then Windhager, if he's just a pure ball getter in the midfield, then he will be a very good pick, and 440. But yeah, awkwardly priced, I know. But if he is released to just be a pure ball getter, then the sky's the limit for him because he's a very good player. Noah Anderson, 2.4%. Dersma, 2.3%. Awkwardly priced as well, Dersma. Anderson will be a pretty good pick, but he's always got Took there, so you'd think that that might affect his numbers just a little and just enough to put us off. Matt Rowell, well, we know about Matt Rowell. He's burned all of us, just 2.3% at the moment. Lloyd might be kind of moving out of the fantasy relevancy place, with some others starting to take a little bit more of the ball, and Lloyd starting to move into more of an attacking kind of between halfback and wing defender rather than just a pure defender when they used to chip the ball around. Let's keep moving down to see if we can find you something special here. Charlie Constable's an interesting one, but really, really good price for him. Defender mid, 300 and something, I think it is. Let's have a look at Charlie. 332. But whether he gets a game or not, that's the problem. But if he does, jump on, because we know he can get plenty of the ball, as we discovered when he used to be at Geelong. Buzzlinger, if he gets a look in for the Dogs this year, high draft pick, 1.7% at the moment, and he'll be a good pick. Jai Simpkins, very low on the ownership, 1.5. I think that's due to people being burnt by him before, but mark my words, I just got a feeling that Simpkin could have an amazing year this year, especially now that he's been named captain. He knows he has that belief from the coach and from the assistants and from the club as a whole. So co-captain, of course, with Luke McDonald. So that could be the impetus he needs to do very well. Josh Ward's an interesting one. Interrupted pre-season, a little bit injured at the moment, or trying to come back from an injury. 1.5%. Obviously, Miller are there, 1.5% as well. Ward, obviously, I'd wait a little bit with Ward. It's only his second year. Obviously, the second-year blues can really hit players. And what impact the Cooper Stevens and the new level of fitness for Newcomb and some other guys moving through there, Dylan Moore and a few others, what impact that has on Ward and whether he becomes one of the main guys in there or not. It'll be an interesting watch. I've got my eye on Jai Culley. I've heard that he's ripping it to shreds at training for the Eagles. Only 490, about the same as Dersma, but Culley already proved at the end of last year he can be quite a good scorer. And I think with a greater level of fitness base, and if he's released to just be a pure mid, then he could be quite good. So keep an eye on him. Tanner Bruin is another one. We need to see something first from Tanner Bruin, though. What else? Obviously, Walsh is low because he's injured. He'd be a lot higher if he was available. Let's have a look down here for you. Fergus Green, obviously, if you don't know about him, mature age recruit for the Hawks, used to play for the Dogs, tore it shreds last year in the VFL for Box Hill, and I think he'll be a good pick and a nice little replacement there for Jack Gunston in the forward line for the Hawks. So keep an eye on him. Ben Keys is very low in ownership, 1.1, probably because of the end of last year where they made him play forward. But I hear that was because he was injured and he's looking to go back into the midfield. Even Berry, who I've got in my team at the moment, who did really well last year, 1.1%. I actually think he's a lot better than a lot of people are saying, and I think he will do really, really well this year. I think they're going to look to kind of get these younger guys like Berry more time around the ball, and I think that can only mean better scoring for him. Whether that's enough to pick him or not, and there's enough upside there, I'm not sure, but I definitely like the look of Sam Berry. Rowbottom's another one who could break out this year, just a 1.1% ownership at this stage. So we keep arrowing down. Keep an eye on Lockie Jones for Port. Quite a good player from what we've seen so far, and I think at some point he's going to break out. Now, whether that's this year or not, I'm not sure, but I think at some point Lockie Jones is going to have a great year. Bailey Dale, 0.9%. Probably a lot of mouths to feed down the back there with Caleb Daniel, with Bailey Williams, and lots of other guys that kind of head down back. Even Treloar played halfback last year. So that's what makes people a little bit scared to pick Bailey Dale. But if they get a few injuries down the back there, I think Bailey Dale is a really good option. And the thing that's on Bailey Dale's side is that they really love having the ball in his hands. And I've also heard that Caleb Daniel might be moving a little bit further up the ground this year too. So that will help his cause in terms of fantasy scoring. Neil Erasmus, he's getting more goes in the midfield in training. And they're certainly looking at him as a CBA filler for this year and for years to come. Erasmus, still a bit expensive for me in the 400s, I think. Let's just double check that. I think he's, 418. Probably not yet, but definitely thereabouts in the future. Satterfield will be an interesting watch at Essendon with their new game plan. Finished off the year last year at Carlton really, really well. So he's got a fantasy game, but whether he's released to completely be able to embrace that, that'll be an interesting watch early on. But at the moment he's my team, but I'm not sure he'll stay there by the time round one comes along. So as we arrow down further and further, it gets harder to find guys that will be good picks for your team. Cooper Harvey, keep an eye on him, the son of Brent Harvey. Obviously had a lot of hype about his drafting, but I hear he's a pretty good player. Maybe not will get a go this year, who knows, but if he does, jump on. He a good ball getter and a talented young player for the Kangaroos. Matthew Allison, bit of hype around him as a rookie with the loss of Max King for St Kilda. There's already a few woes there for St Kilda in their forward line, so Matthew Allison might get an early debut as to cover that. But also Shannon Neal might for Geelong. Keep an eye on him as Tom Hawkins has been flagged to miss the start of the season, recovering from an operation and an injury. Let's see. Jed Anderson's an interesting one. If he gets a go at Gold Coast, he's quite well priced, but that's a big if. Greg Clark's another one. If he gets released from tagging, still only about 418k. If he gets released to just be a 416, if he gets released to just be a pure ball getter, Greg Clark will be a good scorer because he's proven that in the waffle. And even when he played last year as a tagger at times, he's still got plenty of the football. I think in his first game as a mature age recruit for the Eagles, I think he scored over 100 as a fantasy player. So keep him on your radar. Let's keep going down to the very low ownership players. Let's see here. Dylan Shield, interesting, 0.6. Reeves, 0.6. Obviously, there's been a lot more talk about Meek because he's moved clubs, but I'm hearing that Reeves might be the main guy there in the ruck. So if he is, then we know he can score. He scored pretty well a couple of years ago as the main guy in the ruck. So we'll keep an eye on him. Be interesting to see how Hawthorn go with all that. Got an eye on Bedford, off to GWS, more game time. Played a lot in the sub for when he was at Melbourne. So if he just gets full games and lots of chance to run, they're going to try and get the ball in his hands because he's very quick and can transition the ball from defence to attack quickly or through the midfield. So he might be a good pick at about the 350s. But whether he can get big fantasy scores, we haven't actually seen yet. Keep an eye on Josh Carmichael, who was a mid-season draftee for Collingwood and a mature age player. When he came in last year, he scored pretty well, and if he gets another go, he's a good option. Zach Guthrie, I've got in my team at the moment, but that's just as a filler. But you never know. It could be his year, Zach Guthrie. We've been waiting for 2 or 3 years. He will show glimpses with big scores at times. Obviously, they're going to look to transition Stewart and Duncan out of those roles as they're both getting a bit older. So I think that Zach Guthrie could be one of the main guys down there. So he certainly grew a leg in the last half of last year and started to become a regular. So whether that converts to more fantasy points, I don't know. Keep an eye on Teakle, but he might be a little bit Bryn Teakle there as a ruck at Port, but he might be a little bit too overpriced for us at this stage. Okay, Ben Hobbs is an interesting one. 0.4% ownership. Maybe he'll get more of a go in the midfield for Essendon. Tex Wanganeen as a rookie option looked all right last year when he played his few games. He might get more opportunity in 2023 as well. I've heard Jack Zeebel's going back to play defensively. I'm not too sure about him. We definitely need to keep an eye on him, but if he becomes that main distributor back there, then who knows? And Drury, we've heard about him today. Blake Drury, midfield forward for the Kangaroos, who was a mid-season draftee, I think, or a rookie draftee, sorry, my mistake. Let's have a look at him. I think he's about 200k, yeah. So I heard he might be a bolter for early this year, thanks to Jay Clark for that scoop from the Herald Sun. And so Blake Drury might be one to watch early on in the season. Leo Connolly there for St Kilda. Let's hope he gets more games. He's shown that he can score okay. Harry Roaston is one that I am absolutely sure that there was about 5 or 6 clubs really on this guy, which is why GWS grabbed him very, very early. And I think the Swans were interested and a few others. And yeah, he's 200 and he's higher, 270k. But there was a lot of raps on him, a big body midfielder. And if he gets a go, check him out too. Let's go further down. Cody Burgill apparently is doing well at Eagles training. Might get a go early in the season. Might be a rookie that we can grab hold of. Further down. Jack Bytel is one I've had my eyes on. A few years ago when he played, he scored pretty well even as a tagger. He's a bit of a smoky to be the new tagger at St Kilda. And Windhager get released. I don't know. We'll see what, if anything, what Ross does with Jack Bytel. But he's still juicily priced, only about 305. There it is. And I'll be interested to see if he gets a bit of a go and if he's in Ross's best 25 or 6 players. Tajwa Worden, we've heard a little bit of, might get a go at Melbourne if they get a few injuries. Matt Crouch, well, what a fall from grace for Matt Crouch. 0.2% he has ended up as a midfielder and owned. And, wow, does he ever get another game at Adelaide? That'll be really interesting watch this year, whether he finds his way back into favour with Matthew Nicks and the Adelaide team. But, yeah, it's hard to see how after all the water that's gone under the bridge there. As arrow down, Brent Daniels is an interesting one. Hasn't played for a while. Is pretty cheap now. A forward at 318k. Keep an eye on him. He's not a huge ball getter or a huge scorer, but if he does show signs early that he's going to be picked, then he can end up being a guy that at least we know he's going to play every week, and he can be good for a bit of cash generation to maybe jump up another 100 or 200k and make us a bit of money. But I certainly wouldn't be relying on him for scores on the ground. Arlo Draper apparently has been tearing it up at training. Thanks to Jen there on Twitter, who has been giving us lots of great updates. Arlo Draper's been doing well for Collingwood at training, and he's one to keep an eye on. Tom Campbell's got that Achilles, so whether he plays early or not, obviously we wouldn't have picked him in our fantasy teams, but whether he plays or not affects a lot Rowan Marshall. Lockie Hunter's a really interesting one at about a midfielder. He's going to be cheaper than he's ever been, probably at $7.32 there for Melbourne, but you know, they're going to have Langdon on one wing, and they're going to have Hunter on the other wing, and they're going to have Salem down back. And so where does Brayshaw go? Does he go in the middle? But then, you know, you got Petrarca and Viney and Oliver there in the middle. So where does Brayshaw play? I think that's a really interesting question for Angus Brayshaw, and one that probably, if you're going to own him, you need to answer that in a confident way and know what he's going to do. Obviously, he's going to spend some time around the centre bounces, but they're also going to have those other three guys. So those main four are going to be rotating through, and I guess, but when he's not rotating through there, where does he go? Is a big question. Does he go down back and help Gawn and Salem, or does he go and play a little bit half forward? Laddams is a really interesting one. 0.2. Now, Hickey's getting towards the end of his career at the Swans. He's been a great servant for the Swans and for the other clubs he's played for, but Laddams is the heir apparent for that spot. Priced at about $5.90. I'm not sure he could jump on yet, but he's proven at Port Adelaide that he can be a good scorer. So at some point he's going to be released to be the main guy, and when he does, I think he's going to be a reasonably good scorer. And you want to jump on that before the prices rise too much, or before, but as I said, it may not be just yet. So once again, with a lot of these guys, we need to see something first before we can confidently pick them in our teams. It's really important that you do see something with your own eyes. Watch a preseason game, or see something in round one. And sometimes, as I've heard somebody say, that it's not just about the scores, it's about where they get the points and how they get the points and how many stat lines they're covering. So it's really important that you're able to watch the games yourself, or watch parts of games to see how some of these guys are going and where they got their points from. So that might be about it. I can't see too many others that are kind of popping out to me at this stage. So we might leave it there. I hope that's helped you. I hope that's given you a few ideas of some left of centre, left field players that might get a chance in the AFL this year, so that you've got a few options when the time comes. Obviously, our structure is going to be based around how many rookies are available and where they're available on the ground. So keep an eye out for some of those guys I mentioned. Keep an eye out on, if you're on social media or Twitter or Instagram, keep an eye out on the fantasy platforms, and there's plenty of information going around about who to keep an eye out for and who to avoid at this time of year. All the best with your teams in 2023, and I'll see you again soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.